Welcome to part 2 of the View Week, lesson 6, where we'll be talking about the main menu view and help menu view. So we have our working application. After we create all this stuff for the start program, we'll need to create, we'll need to prompt, we'll give the user the main menu. And what we're going to do is create a new class in our view package for this main menu. And in this main menu view, we'll want our empty constructor, because we always want one of those. We want a private final string, the menu itself. And this is going to be, again, you're going to want to do it this way, because when we start combining views using interfaces, you'll want to have done this way, as a single string, private final string up at the top. And so we can, actually create our main menu. So we'll say N is for start new game. And I'm just going to copy and paste a bunch. And then I can say maybe L is load saved game. And then maybe H is help menu. Q will be quit. And then maybe I actually want to swap these, because I want S will be save game, save current game. Okay, and then we'll create a method to display the menu. So we'll create a void method, which will be called display menu. And it doesn't take any arguments, because we have the final string already up here that we need to display. And then what this display menu function is going to do is it's going to continue displaying the menu as long as the user doesn't exit or quit the menu. And this is going to be common for all of our menus. I think the example has E for exit, I have Q for quit, doesn't really matter. But how we're going to do this is we used a while loop in our other example. Let's use a do while loop in this example. So we'll create a character called input, and we'll initialize it to just the blank space character. And then we'll do this do, and we have to put our condition while this input character does not equal Q. So let's repeat as long as input doesn't equal Q. And what we're going to repeat? Well, let's output the menu. We'll divide and conquer, so we'll create a method called getInput. And then, okay, trying to match the assignment, this is actually called selection. Our getInput returns a string of input, and then we take our selection variable and we assign it the value of the first character on the input. And that is the not getChar at, but just char at method, and we're going to do it at the index 0. Everything's 0 indexed in all coding languages. Okay, so this method looks good for now. We just need the getInput. So let's create that method. And this is going to return a string, as we already know. And it doesn't take any arguments. And we need a scanner. Call it keyboard again. Why not? And we'll read the next next line from the input, and we'll actually go by the template that is laid out in the assignment. So the algorithm is pretty much this. We create our variables, a scanner, an input, and this is valid Boolean. While we don't have a valid input, we'll prompt them to select an option, get the next line from their input, trim it. This removes spaces from the end and the beginning, so if they enter a whole bunch of spaces, then we ignore those, or yeah, at the beginning or at the end, or if all the characters are spaces, we'll just get rid of them. If the input is null or the length is 0, they didn't enter anything, we'll say invalid input, please enter a valid character. Otherwise, if those aren't the case, then they've obviously entered some valid input, so we'll say is valid is true, and we'll return that input. So now our get input is satisfied. We have this display menu function. We have the logic pretty much in place. So let's try it out. Let's go back to our start program view, and we'll create a new main menu view. And we'll call display menu. And so if we run this, it'll prompt me for my name as usual, and I am missing a whole bunch of new lines. So let me stop that and fix that. And try again. And so it's going to give me my main menu, and it's going to prompt me for anything, and I can say, if I put nothing, then it'll say invalid input, please enter a valid character, and it's red because I accidentally put system.error.println. I just want system.out.println. So again, a little bit incorrect. I'm going to start again. And if I put some character like, again, nothing, just spaces, it'll say invalid input, please enter a valid character. If I type in N, it works. There's obviously, it's not complaining that I'm not entering a valid character. It's repeating, which is expected because my input in my main menu view is not Q. But if I enter the option Q, you'll notice that it quits out, it returns, which is what I want it to be doing. Now, all of these other methods, we're going to have to do something to actually make them not just loop and loop and loop. So let's take those actions. And that's where this do action method comes into play. So again, divide and conquer. We have the get input, which does all the logic to get the input. Let's create a method called do action, which takes a character. We'll call it selection just to be consistent. And it is void for now. I think later we'll actually be returning a Boolean from do action, but void for now is what we want. And this is going to do something different based on the user's input. And so for this, we could use a whole bunch of if-elses. If the input is N, then we're going to start a new game. If the input is S, then we're going to save the game, and all these other things. If else will get really long, so instead we're actually going to use a switch case. Switch cases are special. They can only be used on primitive types, so don't use them on strings, chars, ints, and, well, don't use them on strings, period. Chars, ints, and other primitive types you can use switch cases on, and since we have a char as a selection, we can use that. And so what this is going to do is it's going to pretty much build an if-else for us. We're going to say, if it is the case that selection is N, then take these actions. And the actions I want to take are call a method called start new game. And then we have to make sure to break. Otherwise, this will what happens here will continue executing in the next case. So we have another case, L, S, H, and Q. L, and I'm just going to throw a break in here and then copy this, paste it a bunch, and then auto fix the formatting. And then we had L, S, H, and Q, I believe. And L, S, H, Q. And L, S, H, Q. Perfect. And then in each of these, I'm just going to call my methods load saved, game, save game, save current game, open, well, we'll just call it help menu, and I actually don't need to account for Q since it's already taken care of. So in the case they enter Q, I don't really need to do anything. I can either leave that case there or take it out. I'm going to take it out. And then I can actually add a special default case, which you just do by adding the word default. And in my default case, which means they didn't enter any of these other cases, I'm just going to do a system.out.println invalid option. And then, of course, I need to create all these methods. So I'm going to let this stub out all of my methods because that'll be easier for me. And it'll be clear which ones have been implemented and have not been implemented. So I added all these methods. They're all going to throw unsupported operation exceptions. Let's not do that. Let's actually just stub them out and have it do a print line of called start new game not implemented yet. And I'm going to copy that and overwrite that, and overwrite that. So now we can try running this, and if I enter something that doesn't exist, it will oh, I'm not calling do action. Also, there's one other thing I could do. These lowercase q I want to ignore, so I can fix that as well. So over back in my get input, I'm going to return input.to uppercase because that'll make my life a lot easier. And then in my display menu, now that I have a selection, I actually need to make sure I call do action, passing in that selection. So let's run that now. Try this out. So if I enter the character Y, we know it's not a valid option, so it's going to say invalid option. If I enter the character N, it's going to say called start new game not implemented yet. So you can see, oh, I do need a case for Q if I'm going to have a default that says invalid option. The case for Q will just be empty though. It'll just break. Okay, so everything is working the way we expected. Sorry, I got some text that I had to answer to, so I do not recall where I left off. But what you have to do still in this assignment is implement the help menu. So what we'll do is we'll create a new class called help menu view, and we will pretty much copy everything from main menu view, at least the get input, do action, display menu, and the string. I'm just going to carry them right over, make sure to include the import, change this from main menu view to help menu view, so we have a nice empty constructor there, and then none of these methods are going to be the same, so I'm just going to delete them. And all these options are going to be different, but I at least have the structure that I want. So the menu is going to change. It'll be maybe about this game, H for how to play, maybe O for objective, maybe a help on movement, and then we'll still have a quit option. So now I have A, H, O, M, and Q. So I have A, H, O, M, and Q, and this will be about game. This will be how to play. This will be objectives. This will be movement, help, and Q is our standard quit. And again, we'll just let our IDE create our methods for us. And then all we have to do in these methods, because the help menu is not really going to do any input or do anything special, is just do a sysout and say about stuff. And obviously, I'd really appreciate it if you actually completed the help menu and said, you know, how to play, and actually did all of that text. And then there is one last thing we'll be doing in this assignment, which is the stubbing out of the creating a new game. But we can make sure this works. So we can jump back over to our main menu view, and now in our help menu, instead of having that just stubbed out, we can actually create a help menu view. We'll create a new one, and then we'll just call help menu dot display menu. And now when we run this, new game still not going to do anything. Help menu will do something now. Again, L isn't a suggestion, or isn't a, oh it is, it's load game, sorry. Y isn't anything, so I'll say invalid option, but H is now a valid option that does something. And so if I hit H, then the help menu loads. It's going to say about this game, how to play, and again I can say, oh, okay, let's learn about it. Let's quit. Quitting takes us back to the help menu, or the main menu. And the way it does this is because you can see code will just run. Our code, you can follow your code by following the lines. So let's say I'm in this help menu view. It's going to call display menu. So I can jump over to display menu. And an easy way to do that actually is to control click the method. So it takes me over to display menu. It's going to create this variable selection. It's going to output the help menu. And then it's going to collect the input the player enters and then do the action based on that. Let's say the action is A. So it's going to call about game, display that, and then jump back here. And is selection Q? No, so repeat. And so when selection becomes Q, I actually jump out of this method. Display menu is void, so it doesn't return anything, but it will return back to the place it was called. This method has no more lines it'll execute, so it'll actually return back to the line where this one was called, which is our action. This breaks out of here, so which means the switch is done, which means we return back to the place where do action was called. And was selection Q in our main menu? No, it was actually H, which was the help menu. That was saved back in this view. So it's going to repeat the main menu now. So when we quit out of the help menu, it jumps back to displaying the main menu. So you can follow it. It's a little tricky to follow, but it's a good practice to know where code is going to jump back to and what it's going to do next. And then we can quit from our main menu, which then returns us back to our start program view. This returns us back to save the city, which then ends because main is out of lines to run. So that is a pretty big mouthful, but it's how your code will run, so it's kind of good to know. The very, very last thing you need to do is pretty simple. All we're going to do is in our main menu view, in our start new game, I think it has a different controller, but I'm going to use the program controller. You're just going to call the program controller, instead of create player, create new game, and we'll pass it in the save the city, which is the class. We'll get the player since it's been set. So we're going to create a new game for this, for our application on the start new game. And obviously that method doesn't exist, so we can actually create it and then follow it, and it'll say throwing an unsupported operation exception. Let's just actually create a new game. Game G gets new game. And then on our game class, we actually probably should have a player at the very least, so let's create a private player P. We'll call player, and we'll create getters and setters on that. And we'll create a constructor on game. Actually, I want an empty constructor. And then back over in our help menu, or main menu, sorry. We create the new game, and then we assign we'll assign the player to the game, so g.setPlayer, the player, and then we'll make sure to save our game in that static instance so we can access it from anywhere. So we'll have save the city, dot set game to be this game G. And then everything works. I'm fine with you still calling this as a non-implemented method, although if you want to just forge ahead, you could create the main menu view. I would actually really, or you could create the game menu view, or whatever menu it is that you decide you need, like movement view, whatever it is. You should have actually should be the game menu view, and this is the menu that is displayed for each turn. Every generic turn will have this menu, and you'll have things, again, we'll talk about it next week when we're actually implementing it. But yeah, if you get this far, I'm totally happy. And sorry these were so long. I really apologize. I think next week I will code everything and then just explain it instead of having you sit while I type, because I can't really talk while I'm typing. It's not something I've learned as a talent. And then I will also commit this and push it to my repository. So you have this entire thing as an example, and you will be copying a good chunk of it. Please don't just copy and paste my code. If I see comments like this on your code where it says my name, I'll know you've copied and I'll be a little upset. Part of the fun of coding is not just copying and pasting, but actually writing the code yourself, finding new ways to do things. If you want to do everything as lowercase, that's fine. If you want to do something slightly different, I'm totally down with it. If you don't like this while is valid, if you want to do while here, that's great. If instead of a switch case you want to do if else's, I don't really care. But I'd like for you to actually type it, you or your teammate. There is only the team assignment this week, so there's just this. So please don't just copy and paste, and have fun with this. You'll actually have some running code, which will be really exciting, especially as we start building the game out and making it really work. So yeah, have fun with it this week. Sorry these videos are so long, and have a nice week.